Talking a little NBA. Chris Mannix, NBC Sports Radio, joins us here, the 24/7 live sports radio. You can get the app at NBCSportsRadio.com. And Chris, early NBA stuff. Interested to get your take on some things here. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
We're doing good, although here locally, another game last night for the Sixers, 0-7. They keep losing these close ones. I want to pick your brain a little on what's happening here with Embiid and the way they started things. It seems like they're moving in a positive direction, but it's not translating to wins on the court. And now slowly you start to hear Brett Brown's name a little bit. What's your take early? Does this look like the direction they've been going, or should the fans kind of calm down a little bit? Are they moving in the right direction with what you see?
Oh, they're moving in the right direction. The record, who cares? You win 30 games, you win 20 games. I don't think you're taking steps forward. They've obviously been plagued early on by injury, with Ben Simmons being the most notable, but Jahlil Okafor working his way back. But if you're a Philadelphia 76er fan, start worshiping at the Church of Joel Embiid. This guy's the real thing. This guy is a bona fide MVP candidate in the coming years. Maybe even an all-star candidate this year if they can string together some wins in December and January. There's nothing he can't do. There's literally nothing he can't do. He's just such a special talent on both ends of the floor. I think having him out there and having him being able to do what he can do, it changes everything with Philadelphia.
Now, over the years that we've talked, Chris, there's a lot of people on either side of the fence. Does seeing Embiid and his skill set make those 3 years worth it?
It's hard to say if it's worth it right now. At the moment, it feels pretty good because of what they've gone through and the ability for this guy to come out and be the star that he is. But is it worth it to just totally tank and demoralize the franchise and become the laughingstock of the NBA? That I'm not so sure. We have to wait and see how this whole thing plays out. But no question, having a guy who I think in 3 years is going to be the best center in all of basketball, that certainly takes a lot of the pain out of that wound.
What's your take on how they're handling him? I know they announced no back-to-backs, but he didn't play last night. It was basically volume of games was the reason. You have any problem with them just randomly selecting when they're going to play him and when they're not going to play him? I have a feeling if they had a home game last night, he probably wouldn't have sat out, but he has not played on the road. He doesn't travel with them either when he doesn't play. What's your take on the way they've handled that?
Yeah, I think they've handled it pretty well for right now. The guy's coming off 2 years of foot problems. You want to be extraordinarily cautious, especially in the first 2 months of the season as you kind of bring him back. It's nothing different than what we've seen from guys like Brook Lopez with foot problems, Kevin Durant with foot problems. In fact, Durant's an example of kind of what can happen if you don't bring a guy back slower than you should with the injury he had a couple of years ago and the second surgery he had to have on that foot. So I'm perfectly fine with the way the Sixers staff is doing this, and don't be surprised at all when we get to mid-December, early January, to see the shackles come off him and he's playing 30-plus minutes tonight.
Chris Mannix with us, NBC Sports Radio. You also see him at the Vertical. Chris, when they get Simmons and they put those two pieces together, what about the other guys, Okafor, Noel? Are you going to still see a lot of talk about this team around Christmas and up to the trade deadline? Is there still a lot of work to be done with this roster? We know they need more pieces, but the pieces they have some of them are pretty valuable, but do they all fit?
Well, no. The front court certainly doesn't fit together at all. You've got to do something with Jahlil Okafor, I think. I think Nerlens Noel and Joel Embiid could thrive together. Noel more of a power forward, plus Embiid showing the ability to step out and space the floor. But Embiid and Okafor are two space eaters in the middle. It just doesn't work for the long term. Okafor is a guy that, if I'm Bryan Colangelo and Brett Brown, sort of in collusion, I would spend a lot of time these next couple of months really trying to prop up the trade value of Jahlil Okafor. Get him as many minutes as you can. Get him as big a numbers as you can, because come February, you really want to try to move him for some kind of two-guard or a point guard or even a draft pick if that's what it takes. Because I think you got to clear that logjam eventually in that front court. If you look at the Sixers, their problems are obvious. The backcourt is a mess. The D-League backcourt right now with Jared Bayless out, and even when Jared Bayless is healthy, it's not good. So I think if you can find a way to make Okafor's value higher and then flip him for a guard type, you're really going to improve your team dramatically.
Yeah, Sixers lose another close one last night. They had a late game lead that they blow. They lose the game to Cleveland. They lose the game to Oklahoma City. They lose the game to Orlando. So they're getting there, but still, you're right. The backcourt is a big issue for them. Chris Mannix with us. Your thoughts on Brett Brown? I mean, is it time to start judging him? Is it not? There has been some whispers that Colangelo, if they don't start winning some games, that he could get a little, lack of patience here. Is that fair?
I don't think it's fair because I don't think you could put one coach into this mix, not just a young mix, but a mix that's had a lot of roster turnover over the last few years and have them be successful. Brett Brown, by all accounts, is a very intelligent basketball mind, a very good teacher to young players. And the culture of losing was not something that he chose. It was thrust upon him in recent years. Now you go into this season, and yeah, you've got Joel Embiid, and he's great, but as you mentioned, the backcourt stinks, and you've got injured players up in the front court. So I don't know what the expectations should be. Is it 2-5? Is it 1-6? I mean, what makes Brett Brown a better coach at this moment? I'd be more concerned if I was Brett Brown if Mike D'Antoni was still on staff. And we know the relationship between D'Antoni and the Colangelos. I could see some heat being felt on him then, but with the staff he has now, I don't think it makes any sense to replace him, nor do I think it's warranted at this moment.
A couple quickies from you, Chris. You buying the Hornets? They're first in the East. I know it's very early, but are you buying that team long term?
Not long term. I think they're athletic in the front court, but they don't have front court scoring, so to speak. Their perimeter shooting has been better than what I thought it was going to be, but again, just like with Chicago, I expect that to come back to earth. They're a playoff team, but not a top 3 seed, I don't think.
All right. How about Boston struggling early? Will they erase that and be, top 4 seed?
Yeah, they'll erase that. I think they're in the mix for the top 2 seed, actually, a 2nd seed. Once Al Horford, who has to deal with the concussion issues, comes back, Jay Crowder comes back, a couple of the guys off their bench, they're trying to get healthy. They've got rebounding issues, no question. They lost 2 of their top 4 rebounders, Jared Sullinger and Evan Turner, but that's the kind of thing they'll figure out. They're too talented and too well-coached to not be a 50-plus win team.
2 in the West, real fast. Lakers, exceeding expectations?
Love them. Wrote about them for the Vertical. One thing Luke Walton told me a couple of days ago was that their ability to finish games has exceeded his expectations. Young players, as you're seeing in Philly, they don't finish games particularly well. This Laker team has done a much better than expected job in finishing games in the fourth quarter. That's been a huge boost for them early.
Yeah, and the other guy, you mentioned D'Antoni. How about the Rockets? They've played much better offensively. We thought they'd be good. They got to fix the defense, but top 4 seed right now.
Yeah, they've been very good. I saw them, and I talked to Mike D'Antoni on Monday in Washington. And you mentioned, though, the defense. Like, what's going to define them is can they be a top 15 defensive team? Right now they're abysmal in that category, and James Harden, with the responsibility he has offensively, it's fair to wonder if he gets better on the defensive end. But if they can move into the upper half of the NBA in defense, they'll be a tough out in the playoffs.
Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, the 24-hour sports talk network. Download the app and subscribe to the Mannix podcast. Check him out at the Vertical as well. Always good to catch up with you, Chris.
Anytime.